go. We're going to cup, this is exercise number 1. We are going to look at the difference between a commercial grade coffee, so scoring below 80 points, and a specialty coffee scoring above 80 points on the Specialty Coffee Association cupping form. And I've laid out my 2 coffees here. My water is shortly off the boil. Let it cool down, just get down to that 93 to 95 degree range. Water boils at 100 Celsius. So you can do that by, just popping it open and waiting. This has already been waiting for a little while, so I'm not going to open up, or throwing a splash of fresh water in it after it's boiled. You're going to prepare your cups of coffee so that it's a 1 to 18 ratio. These cups hold 200 milliliters of water, but really after the coffee's in there and it's filled up, it's about 180. So 180 divided by 18 is 10. That means I'm going to put 10 grams of coffee in. When I fill it up, it's going to be filled with the remaining 180 grams or milliliters of water. 1 gram of water equals 1 milliliter of water. It's a beautiful thing in the metric system. So if you have some kind of a scale, you can also measure your volume on a scale. Just put an empty cup on there, and it could be a cappuccino cup, a rice bowl, a small soup bowl, and fill it with water. See what the scale reads in grams. That's your milliliter capacity. One more note, if you got the whole beans, you're going to need to grind this coffee. And so this coffee is ground at a kind of a medium coarse. Not quite coarse like a French press, but also just a little, this would be like the real old school flat bottom auto drip machines. In more recent time, we've got Able cones, or the metal filters for the B60 pour over type, and that you want a medium coarse grind. So if you look at it up close, you'll see there's a few slightly larger chunks, that happens in a grinder, and then there will be some that are smaller, but in general, it's kind of like a heavy sea salt, maybe a smaller golden sugar, or some of the bigger sugar granules, not the real fine sugar, but I think sugar granules is a good comparison for this grind level for a cupping exercise. Now, if you don't have cupping bowls and just a couple of spoons, then you can brew your coffee, and you'll want to use good brew methods as well. So specifically on the table here, we have a low-grade Mexico compared to a really nice Colombia. We're going to see the difference. Now get a timer. If you have a timer on your phone, go ahead and use it, but you're going to set the timer for 4 minutes. So the coffee is going to steep for 4 minutes, and then we're going to break it. We're going to smell it. But first, we enjoy the dry fragrance. So let's just observe these coffees here. It smells like coffee. Nothing particular jumps out at me. It's not, there's a slight unpleasant smell to it. It's not that bad, but it's just not like a beautiful smell. This coffee smells brighter. It smells richer. Both of them were roasted to the same roast level, but this one has kind of like an apple, a crisp, green, fresh fruit quality to it, which is really nice. Yeah, like brown sugar, there's these layers. And so with specialty coffee, you want to feel that there are layers. It's like I have green apple with brown sugar, with some roasted nuts, kind of like toasted peanuts. Got all of this kind of stacked up in there. It makes me really happy when I smell that coffee. This one, there's just a flatness to it. There's not a layered complexity. There's just a flatness to it. It smells like coffee. So get your timer ready there. Hit start. And again, according to your bowl size, you should put in enough coffee so that I'm just going to fill this right up to the edge there. Okay, Now we started with the dry fragrance. We use the word fragrance for dry coffee. Now I can smell the aroma. The coffee's wet, it's bubbling, it's brewing under the surface. Again, it just smells like coffee, and that's what it's supposed to smell like. Nothing striking about that. And when you begin, you may say, it all smells like coffee. That's okay. That's where you have to get experience on recognizing the new and nuanced fragrances and aromas. Now, for me, the aroma is often not nearly as clear, crisp as the fragrance is. Not until I break the coffee after the 4 minutes. I'm going to break the crust. And then a lot of those aromas do kind of come jumping out at me. So even this one here, it just smells like a beautiful, complex coffee. I'm not getting all of the nuanced notes that I received when it was dry. So one of these cups right here is going to be for rinsing my spoons, and the other one is going to be for catching the coffee grounds after I clean up my coffee. This simple coffee cupping setting, and move my 2 bags of coffee here to the back. This simple coffee setting can be replicated anywhere in the world. And that's why we use these standardized procedures, standardized methods, because you can do this if you're on a coffee farm, if you're at a coffee mill where it's being processed, if you're at an export company, if you're an import company, if you have a roastery, if you're a cafe owner, if you're at your home. Anywhere you can replicate, you need some bowls, some hot water, some coffee, some containers, and a couple of spoons. Now these spoons have cupping spoons are a little bit wider. So they have a nice wide circle. If you get some fun cupping spoons, they'll have some kind of a design on them. And they have deeper bowls, okay? So not really a flat spoon, although that can work if it has a nice big round surface. And ideally, you're going to have 2 matching spoons because soon here we'll break the coffees and then we'll clean the coffees, and I'll demonstrate that for you. So we're right here at 25 seconds to go. You're so very patient. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just insert my spoon into the coffee halfway and then just push across gently. Then I can kind of do a couple circles. Maybe I'll push across one more time. The goal is just to kind of break that surface and see what if other aromas come out of a cup of coffee. I'm going to keep one of them in there rinsing, the other one. Not bad. I don't smell any defects in it. Nice. Yeah, the second one just has a sweeter smell to it. And sweetness is really important in specialty coffee grading. We want to have sweet coffees. We want to have acidity, just a vibrancy of flavors. So before I go from one bowl to the next, I'm going to use my water to rinse my spoons. Okay, so then I'm going to put the 2 spoons together and I'm going to comb across and then tuck them in. So I'm going to put them together, horizontal, comb across, and then tuck them in. And then lift out just a few of those floating coffee grounds on the top. Perfect. Now at this point, I usually start my timer again for 4 minutes. And that's because I want the coffee to cool down. If you just drink a straight, fresh, hot, black cup of coffee, you think that the flavors aren't there. But really, your tongue just isn't able to translate and perceive, rather, those flavors because the predominant sensation is hot. And your mouth is telling you something really hot is in my mouth and it's trying to burn me. And so that just triggers your brain to be in more of a fight or flight mode where if something's too hot, you spit it out, right? So as the coffee cools down, there is a transparency in the flavor. There's also just the fact that your tongue can now receive and perceive those flavors that are present, the acidity and the sweetness, whatnot. So we're going to let this coffee cool, and then we'll slurp it. We'll talk about that, how to aspirate as you take in your coffee, and just kind of what we're perceiving in each of these. So stay tuned. All right. I just realized, here we go, 4 minutes. I just realized I didn't have my lapel mic on for the last video. Maybe I should have switched the order because it sounds like the sound came through fine, but now I'm going to be slurping. And maybe you want to plug your ears for this one. My wife certainly does. She doesn't enjoy the slurping sound. So what is this? If you've seen coffee cupping before, why are they slurping their coffee? Why are they aspirating? Well, it's just like we may have talked about in the sensory section, if you've made it there. The tongue, and as we drink coffees and as we breathe, this whole olfactory gustation, our nervous system as we sense smells, is connected with the air that we breathe. And so if you are a child and you don't like your food, you might plug your nose and then you'll find a way to eat it with your nose plugged because it reduces the flavor you actually perceive. In the same way, unfortunately, we're taught, many people in Western countries were taught to chew with our mouth closed. We don't enjoy the flavor of our food as much when we're reducing the amount of airflow during consumption. So for coffee cupping, we increase the airflow. And in order to do this, it's been 4 minutes now, so the coffee is cooled down. You can wait 5 or 6 minutes depending on the temperature that you feel comfortable with. But what you'll do is you'll just dip your spoon lightly into the top surface there. And you can fill it up, you can go halfway with your spoon. And you're going to slurp it in like you're going to be taking in air so that it just kind of sprays across your mouth. Don't suck too hard. You don't want to inhale the coffee. That'll send you coughing right away. But as you bring it in, then you just spray it across your tongue. You spray it through your mouth. So this Mexican coffee, it's not terrible, but there's kind of a slight dryness. Like it makes my tongue feel a little bit dry. We can use the word astringency. That's just like a kind of a puckering or a tingling in the back. It has a really nice chocolate to it. A lot of Mexican coffee has a nice chocolate to it. Personally, this is the kind of coffee that you would blend into an espresso. You would darker roast it. You would bring out a lot of chocolate notes. It's not a terrible way to buy coffee. And it may be, it may be right around that 80, 81 points. This is not a terrible coffee by any standard. But it is much lower scoring than the Colombia. This coffee here has very low acid. The acidity value in a coffee combines with the sweetness. This is also not very sweet. The bitterness is prevalent. So all of those things in general just bring the score down on the coffee. Whereas this Colombia immediately the front sides of my tongue, they're just lighting up. All over my tongue, it's lighting up. This one mostly just was in the back, the center back, and yeah, a lot of sweetness, like fruit sweet, acidity. It's clean, it's very clean. So there's this long lasting kind of cocoa, like I said before, like peanut brittle, brown sugar, and roasted nuts. A lot of different flavors, very complex. I love this Colombia Timana Catura Bourbon blend. Not bourbon, but bourbon. Now, the Mexico coffee, like I said, it's very balanced. Something we talk about in coffee is balance. Unfortunately, it's like on an equalizer. If you're setting your car stereo or your home stereo, you can turn up the treble, the mids, the bass. And this Mexican coffee, it's just like everything's at the center line. Nothing's been turned up. It's very balanced in the center line. It has that kind of nice chocolate quality to it. It's not terrible, but just less sweetness, less acidity. And the aftertaste goes away pretty quick. The aftertaste, what does linger is, just slightly unpleasant, slightly bitter. Whereas this Colombia starts really wild and fruity and fresh. And it's very pleasant. As you swallow it, then you kind of breathe in and out. You can continue to be reminded of all that's in this coffee. I can continue to sense those flavors. Aftertaste is a really big deal in terms of scoring your coffee highly. Yeah, that's beautiful. Like, my mouth is just coated with wonderful flavors after the Colombia. Both of these coffees, the body in them is good. It's kind of a medium big coffee. Some people will call that bold because they want something to really coat their mouth. However, the fact that this Colombia has a great body and it's this continuing aftertaste, it just has this impression of long-lasting and bigger body than this one, which disappears. So if I want to keep on tasting these, come back after 5 minutes, come back after 10 minutes, we'll see how this one ages. It would become very, very flat. And this one, as it ages and cools, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I could put this in the refrigerator and drink it tomorrow morning. It'll just become really acidic and sweet. And as it cools, all of those complex flavors will still be present. And that's part of the quality of the bean. All right. So here was your first introduction to cupping, specifically a low-grade coffee and a high-grade coffee. So this will be right around that 80-point mark, almost commercial. This one is definitely a specialty coffee, scoring, I don't know, where would you put this? That's high mid-80s, 86, 87. It's a beautiful coffee. Thanks. See you in the next one.